Yeah, the very first thing is 7 years ago, when I was uh, doing one of my jobs along the reservoirs here in Singapore, I started to reflect about the fact that we are so privileged in urban cities to be able to get access to such lovely access to clean water on the tap. And a lot of times the government is taking care of such situations such that when we turn on the tap, immediately we have access to clear water that is accessible for us. But I started to remember that along the way, I have during my university days when I was doing a lot of community development projects, and we would have opportunities to go down to all across different parts of Asia, especially rural villages. And I would witness this kind of a sight. And all these pictures are not taken off Google; they were from our own cameras, and we have personally witnessed that there are a lot of adults and children drinking directly from pipelines or murky rivers, or just collecting water from cliff runoffs. Many a times, these kind of water conditions are highly contaminated. They're murky, and I think this is no surprise to many places around the world as well that is still in a condition where it's a rural and maybe it doesn't have the access to municipal water supply, and is too far away from some of these treatment facilities. Upon further research, I saw that this is a prevalent problem, not just around the region, but also across the world. 2.1 billion people still face this crucial lack of access to clean drinking water, especially places that we are seeing on the map in red, which highlights the increased level of lack of access to clean water. And so this is a very challenging situation that's still existing here in the 21st century, and that is something that me and my team is constantly worried about and constantly considering in our endeavors to end prolonged thirst. One of the biggest issues that breaks our heart each time is to see that adults, especially children under the age of 12, we see statistics that show that 50% of such children would experience waterborne diseases, diarrhea on a day-to-day basis, and this effectively affects them from being able to go to school and eventually get a good education. And we see that this is an issue when it comes to contributing to the entire poverty cycle, right? It causes them to not have the opportunity to subsequently find good livelihood opportunities because maybe they're not having that good foundation to their education, and also eventually affecting their physical stature as well. And effectively, subsequently, it causes a lack of ability to afford basic necessities such as clean water, and this really causes a perpetual cycle. So the lack of clean water does affect and does contribute quite significantly to the poverty situation. So I started to look also into what are the existing solutions out there, and we see that there really isn't a lack of solutions. In fact, there are many solutions out there in the water space, and I think we had the privilege to hear from many other speakers on this platform as well. One of the key things that we find with the challenge when it comes to rural communities, especially, is that the laying of pipelines that works here in Singapore, as well as many urban cities around the world, is it works for such urban cities because a lot of populations are concentrated. It makes sense. There's a break even. There's a ability to be able to break even and make a profit out of setting up a very big infrastructure. But when it comes to rural communities, which are staying in very hard to reach places, they're scattered and they're not concentrated. This causes the infrastructure cost to be very high. Setup time is very long, and it's just too costly to be able to set up pipelines to connect to such communities. We have filtration, other forms of portable filtration solutions which are reliant on electricity, which may or may not be available, or they tend to be complex and bulky, which requires a lot of technical and engineering know-how, which may not always be accessible. On the other hand, and we see this on the other spectrum, which is the much more conventional traditional kind of filtration, like using biosand filters. We see that these biosand filters, they tend to be quite affordable, but the challenge is that the water flow rate can be quite slow, and also the water quality can still be quite low, even though it's considerably accessible because of the price, but there are still existing challenges. We see communities still facing waterborne diseases because of the water that comes out of such solutions. Boiling water is very prevalent, but it's still quite costly. Later, I'll share some of the costing. And bottled water is extremely costly. It is something that is still very expensive to sustain, and of course, environmentally, it's not friendly. So in terms of the cost comparison, for example, an urban city here in Singapore, the average household income based on statistics and also the average consumption of 18,000 liters for a family of 4, just on average, we see that they're paying something like $35 US per month for access to water from the municipal. But when we compare this to a rural household, for example, in Cambodia, but this is pretty much quite representative across Asia, we see that such communities in rural households, they are paying anything from 1.7% of their income all the way to 36% of their income. And many of these solutions are in the range where it's outside the affordability index according to WHO and the UN standards. So really it is, imagine paying 36% of rural income for clean water access. This is one of the key reasons why water is still such a big issue in the 21st century. It's because of the lack of affordability for some of these solutions. To make matters worse, natural disasters constantly happen. Asia is one of the highest hit by disaster on a year-to-year basis, according to the World Disaster Report. So about 130 million people in Asia lose access to their water simply because infrastructure that's been painstakingly set up can potentially be wiped out overnight. So it is for this reason that Waterroom, the three of us co-founders, we decided that this is something that we really want to solve. My two other co-founders, we met in the National University of Singapore, and we felt that Singapore has a hub of technologies, and we have access to a lot of some of these global technologies, and we would really like to do something about it and put our youth and our passion into solving this, tackling this very extensive global problem. So the very first thing is we started to partner with NGOs and governments around the world. We see the empathy and understanding the problem on the ground was very key. So we had to be on the ground, and we spent a lot of years first understanding the problem, getting to know the villagers. We would spend a lot of time in places like Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Nepal, and try out all sorts of different filtration systems. So we would build our own, use all sorts of different technologies. We tested out here in Singapore, in Cambodia, Batam, and Malaysia. But just to share some of the experiences we had with early prototypes. So this is one of our very first prototypes. It looks something like a solar panel together with a bunch of ceramic membrane put in a very strong aluminum casing, right? So this system works quite effectively for in a village in Indonesia, but unfortunately, when one of our team members was carrying it, he carried it in an awkward position, and we were trying to travel quite far into some of the rural villages, and he accidentally carried it in an awkward manner, and that caused him to have a slip disc, and we had to bring him back for a spine surgery quite quickly. So this taught us a lesson that when a system is weighing 40 to 60 kg and we're trying to bring it across difficult terrain, that makes it really quite challenging, and something that's too bulky, even though we found a way to fit it into a suitcase, but it was just still too bulky and still not portable enough to tackle hard to reach places. Then we eventually modified our prototype and made it smaller into a bag version. This was eventually covered by quite a lot of international media for its portability. But we also found some challenges with this, because when a solution is just relying on gravity in such a small container, it became too slow, wasn't fast enough for the flow rate, especially when it came to disaster hit areas or even on a rural long-term day-to-day basis. Subsequently, we improved it and put on a hand pump to be able to drive the water through. But again, we found some challenges, because if it wasn't built to be intuitive, the system required different mechanisms to connect in order to do maintenance. It became too complex, and a lot of villages, when we came back after a month or so, they just locked up the entire system and said, we're sorry, we don't know how to use this. So we decided to just lock it up so that nobody will steal it before you come back. So I think we had a lot of various kind of experiences on the ground and disappointments before we came up with key principles of design. We told ourselves that in order to really meet the needs of those in vulnerable communities like disaster hit places as well as rural villages, the product needs to be safe, simple, and swift. Safe for consumption, simple to be used by anybody, whether it's a layman. It doesn't have to be an engineer to be able to know how to use it. And it must be swift to deploy, swift to maintain, maintain, swift to operate on a day-to-day basis. Eventually, what happened is we had an aha moment when one of my co-founder, he saw somebody pumping a bicycle in a rural village. Right. So that during that time, when we saw this person pumping the bicycle, a light bulb moment went up where why not we combine filtration membrane technology together with the bicycle pump, and so that we can create a bicycle pump filter design, and this would make it a lot more intuitive for everybody to know how to use. So eventually that's what we did, and in 2018 we were able to launch the Room Filter Plus as our flagship product, where we can provide high quality clean water anywhere we go in just a small package of 2.5 to 3 kg. So this is a video of how it operates. I think a video is effective in explaining how it works. So there's this is in Myanmar, where there is contaminated water in a well, and they're pumping using the bicycle pump filter, and immediately they get access to clean drinking water. So this water that's filtered out is immediately drinkable. Right, so we can see that it's pretty pristine. Yeah, so how you use it is, first step is to find source water. It can be a pothole water, it can be groundwater, surface water, and then set up the system, pump, and just like that, within a few minutes you can set up, and in 5 minutes you're pumping 20 liters of clean water. That's good enough for one family during an emergency setting, or good for one person during a day-to-day setting. Our system can also be utilized in a gravity-fed system. So if they are using it not as a disaster or emergency setting, and it is required on a day-to-day basis, this is an example where we set it up in Cambodia for health clinics all across a province in Cambodia. So they would connect it to their gravitational fed tanks. They put it in a casing so that they can lock it up in the night, prevent any form of theft or damage. But throughout the day, they will open it up. And in this case, they don't have to pump it. It's driven automatically by gravity, and it's sufficient to push through the membranes that we have. Yep. So again, how it's set up is identify existing infrastructure, set it up within 1 hour, turn on the tap, and that's it. You get clean water within 5 minutes, 20 liters of it. So we've been able to stick to our key principles of design. We've incorporated the safety. We've ensured that we use high quality membrane, which are able to remove a very high level of bacteria and virus, 6 log of bacteria, 4 log of virus, and this has been accredited, evaluated by the WHO, which I'll show later. Because of our backwash mechanism, the system can last a very good amount of time, which is 2 years before a cartridge needs to be replaced. It's simple to use because of its intuitive bicycle pump design. Even children are able to use it. In fact, a lot of times we see children more excited to use it because of its hand pump mechanism, which really attracts them. And of course, it's swift to be brought in because of its very lightweight at just 2.5 kg, which is three times lower in weight compared to your average watermelon. Right, that's really light in comparison to its ability to provide an entire community of 100 people with clean water. Some of the reasons behind the technology and how it works is a set of hollow fiber membranes where raw water is entered from the bottom. So every time the piston is pulled up, it causes a vacuum to be created in the middle of the pipe, and the water it comes in from the pump and the hose, and every time you pull it up, it will be trapped into the middle column. Once you push, there's a valve that prevents the water from flowing back into the river or the well, and it goes into a whole set of membranes that is in the middle of the system. It's forced through these membranes, and when it passes laterally, it's forced to cross the membrane, and only clean water will be able to cross through. So bacteria and viruses will be kept out of it, and there's an opportunity for all these bacteria and virus and also other forms of suspended solids to be able to be flushed through. And because of this flushing mechanism, it allows the system to be prolonged in terms of its lifespan, and this really enables the entire system to last that 2 years period compared to many other systems which may require a lot more frequent changes. We see that such frequent changes are not really possible for many of such far-flung communities or hard-to-reach communities. So that's why we really designed a system that can be able to be much more robust. Because of this integrated pump that helps to reduce the need to have an additional generator or an additional hand pump on the site. And this integrates everything into a very lightweight 2.5 kg system so that it can be brought very quickly to different places. Yeah, as mentioned, the system has been evaluated by the WHO just this year itself, 2021, and we have been able to meet the various standards set by WHO to clear a very strong comprehensive protection of a 2-star level of performance. And this report is available on the WHO website itself. So today we're thankful to be able to have reached out and deployed solutions across 38 countries, including some of these places for the emergency response in Myanmar, Laos, Vanuatu, in various humanitarian situations, working with the military, working with refugee camps in different parts of Bangladesh, as well as Marawi, Myanmar, during the ongoing refugee crisis, and also on a long-term rural day-to-day basis in places like Cambodia, Myanmar, and Philippines as well. All right, so some more innovative and enterprising micro entrepreneurs have also utilized the system to be able to provide their community with bottled clean water at a much more affordable rate with our solution. So we see that with this solution, we've been able to provide an entire family with clean water at just 70 cents per month in comparison to many other existing solutions. So this has really helped to drive down the cost of access to clean water to a good 0.4%, allowing many rural communities to still have access to clean water. Today, we have expanded our solutions to a lot more different other kind of solutions in terms of sizing. We've made it smaller in the likes of the room filter mini. We've made it larger in the room filter ultra. We also have the home solutions like a faucet filter. This works well with taps that already have some form of municipal water supply or at least groundwater. And so this is at least a level of point of use system that can be able to provide a last mile treatment of water. And we've also expanded it to other forms of larger scale treatment for local businesses or other forms of treatment. Yeah, so today we also have various deployments across different parts of the Asia region. Of course, we mentioned about our presence in India. We are quite new to the market of India, really. We are right now, we have a distributor here in Nagaland, in Assam, in Sikkim region. We have previous deployments in Chennai during the floods about a few years back. So these are some of our experiences here in India. We're still pretty much quite new in this space, definitely hoping to do a lot more with identifying local partners that can be able to journey with us along to be able to reach out to even more communities, rural or even urban communities in India to be able to provide access to clean water. So happy to answer any further queries, as well as if you would like to work together and partner in this journey, feel free to write to me. Thank you.
Hey, David, thanks. It was really nice one. I have one question regarding the technology. So you mentioned the inside out membrane, right? So
Yes.
is it not logical to have outside in membrane because of the backwash easiness?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for our system, why we decided to use a inside out is because of the robustness of this particular membrane. Right, this membrane is highly tolerant to physical as well as chemical resistance, as well as other forms of even in harsh operating condition, it still is able to show that it has been able to endure this kind of environment in a utility setting. So after having the various experience of working with the typical U-shape outside-in configuration, we found that sometimes during the transportation, there can be a lot of shaking, and this causes some form of a breakage in the membrane as well. But in this case, when we are using a horizontal metal membrane setup where the modules are ported from a top to the bottom, there's very little chance for the membranes to be really shaking around, and so it increases the robustness of the membranes. Of course, this would entail that we would have to add on a lot more pre-filtration. So we have two levels of pre-filtration before that to rightly address what you mentioned, which is to prevent too much of this suspended solids to cause any form of a breakage, or rather cloggage of our inside out mechanism. Yeah, but otherwise we weighed the pros and the cons, and we found that this was able to offer a lot more pros compared to the cons.
Yeah, and a fascinating presentation, David. Thank you. And I want to point out to everyone, David's also put together his team guidelines for safety of water resources and the assessment of water resources. So they have a whole toolkit that they have created to help anyone who's working with remote villages in assessing the needs. But on the topic of the membrane, and I know it's a similar technology that Vivo Blue uses in their filters because of the ability to clean and maintain this over time. Can you talk about the maintenance and also the longevity of the solution?
Yeah, so good question. In terms of the maintenance, for a system, there are three different key areas. So number one is a forward flush. Forward flush can be done very simply. You turn off the front tap, which is where clean water is coming out, and turn on the flush tap. So that action just really takes about just a few seconds, and then start to pump clean water into the system. And this really allows all the dirt and the sediment that has been trapped into the system to be quickly flushed through. Right, this is one of the first ways to regularly do a flushing, so that on a day-to-day basis, it's quick to be able to get rid of all these sediments which are stuck and be able to prolong the lifespan of the system. The second way is to do a back flush. There's a mechanism where we reverse the flow, and this allows the clean water to travel from the front tap and be exiting from the flush tap. And so using this mechanism, we're still using the same pump. We are simply reversing the flow of water using the same pump, and this allows even more thorough washing of the membranes from the reverse direction. The third way is to add on some level of chemical treatment, like chlorine dosage, to be able to kill off any excess build up on the membranes. So there are multiple levels of treatment, but it really depends on the kind of condition of the water locally. We found that in certain places where they're just treating rainwater, a forward flush mechanism has been able to work very well for them in itself, and it has been able to last them the whole period of 2 years. But for places where the water is a lot more turbid and requires much more regularity in backwashing, then we will recommend it to be done more frequently. It could be done depending on the situation. If it's highly turbid, then it might have to be done on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis. But otherwise, it could be done on a bi-weekly basis.
Beautiful. And I just have one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to our expert facilitator, Dr. Hari. But because of India's needs across the country, even mid-market, even luxury homes have challenges with water and are implementing these RO systems, or else boil water or other strategies. Can you just speak about the in-home solution that you have, the success you have, and why you would recommend that over an RO system that communities might be using? David, thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question because there's this national water policy that I recognize the India government has been trying to set up, which mentions that they're trying to shift away from the RO if your water condition, when you measure the water TDS, is less than 500. The recommendation is to be able to use UF system, rather ultrafiltration system, rather than the RO system. So you don't always need to use a RO system, because you may not have the kind of contaminants in there that warrant the requirement for RO, and the government is also noticing that with use of RO, that causes a lot more wastage of water, as well as creation of a lot more saline water, which then is disposed of into the drainage, which also causes problem later. So our solution works very much on the ultrafiltration membranes basis, and that is a higher level in terms of compared to some of the microfiltration ceramic membranes, which may be at the microfiltration level 0.1 microns or so, but we're operating at the 0.01 micron. And so this allows a lot more bacteria and virus to be removed. Even the coronavirus is something that can be, to a good extent, be able to be removed from ultrafiltration kind of technology. So we've adopted the ultrafiltration technology as a key component, and then subsequently added other forms of activated carbon into the household treatment system as well, so that any other forms of older heavy metals can also be absorbed and be removed for households, whether it's urban or in rural development. It can also serve the need. But of course, when we're talking about rural development, we may need a lot more activated carbon and post-treatment because of the nature of the quality of the water that they're facing. So I think in any case where there is a lack of clarity, feel free to chat with my team. We'll be happy to provide some form of consultations and be able to provide more guidance on what are kind of best solutions to use.
David, there's one question for you from a person called Swaminathan on the chat box. I'm sure you've seen that. Could you respond to that, or would you want me to read that to you?
Right, I can read that out. Yeah. Thanks, Swaminathan, for saying it's a very innovative solution. What is the pressure range for the membrane? Any fouling problems faced, and how is it tackled? What's the maintenance requirement? I think I've addressed the maintenance requirement. Perhaps I didn't address the maintenance costs. I think the average cost we can expect is about 10 to 20% of the capital costs of the membrane. So I think that's reasonably quite affordable. The cost really goes into the requirements for manpower to just do some of the flushing and the backwashing, as well as the replacement of the membranes after a 2-year period, right? In terms of the pressure range, so I think our solution works very well in a low range of pressure. So which means that with less than half a bar of pressure, we are still able to produce a good amount of clean water through. It doesn't have to be just through the pump, through the hand pump, but even if it is by gravity. So sometimes we understand that certain water tanks are not fixed at a position where they are high enough compared to this filter, but we've seen that with half a meter, this has already been well sufficient to drive the water through. So starting from 0.5 bar to about 1.5 to 2 bars, that's a good amount of pressure range that our system is able to operate. We're looking to improve the pressure range continuously with our next version soon, and this will increase the upper limit of our pressure so that we can handle even higher levels of pressure, because we do recognize that certain places you have very strong generators that pump water through, and we want to cater for that as well. Any fouling problems faced? Yeah, so as mentioned, that's the case for all ultrafiltration membranes technology. When we are using a physical membrane mechanism, there will definitely be fouling over time. So any technology that uses this will still face that. But how we address this and how the membrane is able to stay physically tolerant to this fouling, as well as the ability to remain tolerant to chemical treatment when there's fouling, is very key. And I think we've used a very strong membrane that's very durable. Even if we overdose on some of the chemicals that are recommended, it has a high tolerance and high ability to handle any a margin of error on that aspect. So definitely we are still recommending that regularity in maintenance is done to avoid fouling, but we have built-in mechanisms that allow this to be rectified very quickly on a day-to-day basis.
Got that, David. We have an interesting person who has a Singapore connect, shall we say. Deepak Vaikar. His research has been in energy systems, and he has conducted, he says he's conducted student and faculty development programs on project-based learning and such. Deepak, given the fact that your research portfolio through Edu Energy Singapore is also something that could have some dimensional value for what David Pong is talking about, would you want to add something at this point in time, which is a take on, shall we say, your response to what David's offering here today?
Thank you very much, Hari, for the kind introduction. It is my great pleasure and honor to be part of this community. Our good friend Raj Ram is also there. Namaste ji. Okay, and David, I think you covered fantastically various aspects. I do not claim to be an expert in water technology, but what we use water for our energy, because as you know, one of the important source for thermal power station as well as hydroelectric power stations. But the kind of solution you have providing, I think I like that the way you went exactly the project-based learning aspect, design thinking, incorporating, starting with something, interacting with the community, empathizing with them, getting their inputs, and then modifying your design till your community is satisfied, your end user. So probably for design thinking, it will be very good case study. And in future, if you are available, we would like to invite you to interact with our students on that.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. Yeah, recognize that design thinking is a very big, important component to innovation, especially in this water space.
I wouldn't say that it's confined to water. We have the same challenge in energy and solutions that we can manage there. Abdul Khurshid, you're from Pakistan, and I'm intrigued. What is your take? Maybe you want to tell us about the water scenario that you face in certain parts of, let's say, Sindh and South Pakistan. Is that something that you want to talk about, Abdul Khurshid? Well, I don't find him responding just now. He's there. Mohammed Jabani, yes. Tell us about yes. Yes, Mohammed. Oh, no. Okay, he's again muted himself. On the India front, can I request, Mr. Nandakumar from the ICCW, on your very considered take, I know where you come from and how you think through these things. What is your take on David's solutions and India's relevance or relevance to India?
Yeah, good evening. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can't see you too well because of the light.
I know there's some lighting. Anyway, I will put it off.
Not a problem.
Maybe distracting.
That's
so fantastic, David. It was quite eye-opener for me, the way you have approached the problem and come to the conclusion. I think you are very focused in what you were trying to achieve, and you achieved that. So it appears to me that this system is ideal for remote places where the water quality per se, the TDS level is not an issue as such. And the problems are more the other forms of contaminants, which may be affecting people, especially in disasters or even in normal conditions. Am I right? So if the TDS level, if it's a coastal region where the salt content is pretty high, then we will need to use RO or some other form of salt removal, desalination. Am I correct?
Yep. You're absolutely right. Yep. So the solution is catered more for the high turbidity environments, but if it's a high TDS, then yes, we still have to resort to other forms of mechanisms and solutions.
Other mechanisms. Right. And okay, and there are places where arsenic is present in most parts of the world, and that's in traces. And you mentioned about heavy metals are also possible to remove through a carbon filter. Or so, are you? Have you ever experienced or experimented? Because Cambodia has a lot of arsenic, and we are working with Cambodia, with the NGOs and an organization there to address that problem of arsenic. But have you experienced arsenic laden water? And if so, could you share some experience with your system? Did it remove or?
Yeah, so arsenic is quite a challenging area to deal with, especially when we're digging much further down. So in Cambodia, yes, when we are digging a lot further down, in like 500 meters or so down, we're going to start to see arsenic in the water. Our solution immediately doesn't remove the arsenic, because as an ultrafiltration, arsenic is still going to go through. But that's where post-treatment is still going to be key. We have a partner here in Singapore as well that deals with arsenic. They have developed the arsenic adsorbent. So we have various post-treatment options that can include some of their adsorbent solutions to be able to remove this arsenic.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that. And yeah. Yes, Dr. Hari.
No, please.
No, there was another interesting option I was considering, that is in government schools in India, especially we are working on some big projects, and we are actually helping them to draft the tender documents. And there are different kinds of schools. There are about 40,000-50,000 schools, let's say in a state of Andhra Pradesh, where in many parts of the state, the TDS is 400 or below. And there are other places where it is more than that. So we are looking at different kinds of solutions. We have been actually asked to develop something which is easy to maintain, easy to operate, low cost. So something like this seems to fit in. And there are many places where there is no power in those schools. They are what are called Anganwadis, which are really poor children who are kind of homeless children. And they are kept there. And there are places where there is no power and no water as well. It's somewhere in the middle of nowhere. But so we may have to transport water. And we are designing a system where it will be brought in and it will be kept on an overhead tank. But what is delivered to the students must be absolutely clean. And the government, it's a government-sponsored scheme, and they are very, very concerned about any backlash if there is a quality problem. So do you think this is something that would be considered? And if, maybe offline, I would like to discuss more detail with you about the capacities that you have and commercial considerations and things like that. And if you have, since you've already done some work in Chennai and some parts of India, what are your plans for expanding into India? Are you looking at setting? Do you have a dealer, or you're looking at some kind of partnership?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning the projects that you're working on. As Mary mentioned, we have all sorts of evaluation and comprehensive understanding of the ground situation, forms and these materials that help us to assess every project on a customized basis. So we're happy to work with you on the project that you have in mind. We have all these resources that Mary has been posting on the group. So I think that's a good way to start, but happy to take you through the entire process.
Right, we'll do that. David, it's good.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Before I get to Chandra and his response to, he's put out a small note, David, on the chat saying these are available in India. So we'll see how he engages. But before that, since Abdul Khurshid has come back here, well, can you tell us a little bit about his, in one or two lines as to where you come from in Pakistan and the Pakistan's water scenario? Nice to have somebody from there. Welcome to this group.
Sir, welcome, and good afternoon from Hyderabad in Pakistan. I am Khurshid Bhatti, and I am working for the Safe Drinking Water since 2006-2005. We are helping here in Pakistan with the Safe Drinking Water Nadi filter. That Nadi filter is made from the mud pot. Mud pot, we usually use the local mud from the any land, and that mud local artisans or mud pots make these pots, and these pots one mud pot and one matka and some plastic pipe and some nets, some cement, and 5 to 4 things local we together collect from the local bazaar or market.
Yeah, from your experience, what is the quality of water that you have in the region?
Yeah, drinking water is very unsafe drinking water in Pakistan, and we facing large crisis in all over Pakistan. Even cities, in urban cities, the government providing the clean water that is not clean, and too much viruses and biological
Sure.
contamination.
Right.
So
Right.
PCRWR report now published 2019 2020,
Yeah.
and that shows that the 86% communities are drinking unsafe drinking water.
Good Lord. Good.
And here in Sindh, where we are working, here a lot of issues. People just on sitting on the on the canals, they are
Yeah.
drinking
Yeah. Yeah.
contaminated water, and in the rural areas, in all over where we are working, people
Right.
are in the same category, and people drinking not getting clean water.
Right.
So we are working in Pakistan since last 2006, and we started with one filter, and now we reached up to mark 300,000 families.
Fantastic.
And thanks God, now different NGOs, INGOs also adopting this our Nadi filter technology, and just giving order local market and produce these filters, and we helping people on large scale.
Lovely. As Mary points out in that chat box, this filter, the Nadi filter, has received several awards, and
For 5 international awards, and 2 awards also nominated another award. Hopefully we will get it in next couple of months.
Inshallah, you'll get it anyway. There is also Mohammed Chabane here. There is Shamsuddin from Kampala, but he suddenly missed out. I think he must have some challenge on his network. It's about 4.5 hours.
Just one comment, Hari.
One moment. Yes, Raj. Yes, please.
Thing that we have to keep in mind is always start with knowing the source of water, the quality, before deciding the system. Many times, even if it is low TDS, people just think RO and just put in an RO when it is not needed. So understanding when each filter, what kind of input quality it requires is so critical. And that thinking has to be instilled in all users and all communities. And that will save. And one comment I made in my chat is there is a lot of scope for competition, and we have to try how to get new players into the market who can reduce the cost and come up with alternate solutions like David is. And the level of thoroughness of a young entrepreneur like David and his team, I really hats off to you, David, and I wish more entrepreneurs like that take up this water challenge around the world. Thank you.
Right. Apala Reddy from Vizag, would you want to speak up? Is there any connect that you see from what David Pong presented before I get to Chandra? Chandra, I know we'll have some interesting things. Apala?
No, I'm happy to.
Great. Chandra Shekhar from Watson. Go on, please. Your turn.
Actually, 2 to 3 points to say. David's presentation was too good. But in the design competition internationally, a similar design has been awarded the first prize in the world this time. That is a design, that is the platform which gives for simpler designs which does maximum impact. A similar design from one, I think, is from some European country. He has got the award, and how 2-3 people can think alike. Then with Terrafill candle, we are using PVC pipes. We are using this bicycle pump, that prototype I am also making here, to see how we could exert pressure and make the flow improve. I am also wondering, because as many of them mentioned, Vivo Blue's hollow membrane, or what these are all, as again somebody else here had mentioned that BARC is giving the hollow membrane technology. The problem is the raw material, polyether sulfone or polysulfone. Availability is from Solvay, one big company, who also bought out an Indian company who indigenized polyether sulfone manufacturing, Garda Chemicals, way back, and they bought it out. So again, they hold this with the US big giants. So the problem is, like many of these solutions are very much available. But if David can say, other than Solvay, there are any other companies who can substitute or give us the right raw material, I think plethora of Indian companies can do hollow membranes and they can collaborate with him or maybe Vivo Blue. In fact, good news is we have already signed a NDA with Vivo Blue. We got an inquiry from UN for 1 million pieces of the single candle. Unfortunately, another hollow membrane company in Nigeria rejected because what they mentioned was 0.1 absolute micron. What they found out after filtration was some presence of pathogen. So how do we address as a layman? How do we ensure that without doing any test or anything, that the membranes meet the standard of highest 10,500? That is one thing. Second thing, how do we reduce TDS and heavy metals and other complex things like exactly what Rajaram sir said? We cannot just go ho-ho with one filter. We need to see the source water and then recreate a tailor-made filter or maybe a combination of these technologies, keeping in mind the cost effectiveness. Like again, I also talked to Abdul Ji also a few days before through the platform. The problem there here also the biosand filters are huge, cumbersome, and the one which are made up of pot, the portability or the portability is very difficult. Again, it addresses only the pathogen issue, but not the TDS or maybe issues like arsenic and fluoride. So we need to have a combination of sorts, maybe tailor a few of these things coming together and then address the water problem. That is my call. So thank you.
Absolutely, Chandra. Since you also mentioned Khurshid's work, see, between Kutch, Alang, and those areas of the west coast to Hyderabad, Sindh, geographically also there is not too much of a difference. And you are across the border with Rajasthan just after Gujarat. And Hyderabad is, deep south of Pakistan, and Sindh has this serious challenge of silt for centuries. It goes back to Indus Valley and so on. So there is a commonality of challenges between what you are now attempting at Alan and what Khurshid is trying to do out there in Hyderabad. And I think there must be some way of getting the two of you to work together from India and Pakistan, if that is possible.
Sir, I assure you the TDS, the biological viruses, the smell, the other issues will not be anymore. Our filter is very smooth, very effective, and it will defeat many filters in last 10 years.
Chandra, your response to that on the Nadi filter?
No, it is not question defeating others or being competitive. The point is to make it more scalable. See, for same thing, this akin to his idea, only difference is my pots are made up of plastic because of the lightweightness and stacking it together and sending it to places in bulk. So I am looking at the cost part. Finally, when it reaches to the customer, it has to be easily accessible, easily assemblable.
Got that, Chandra. We will come back on that one. Let me get to Chandra. Can you respond to what our Mr. Nandakumar of the ICCW said about schools and a few things? And he was asking David, hey, can you come in and see what you can do? What is Provis lying within India? Where is it that people like David Pong can come in with those operatic refinements on either technology or process that can help make this happen better?
Sir, after Vivo Blue came into my life, I have sourced 8 manufacturers who can do this. I immediately shot back a mail to him identifying those people. I went and met each one of them across India very quickly. And one guy I found out who was doing good quality in Pune. Okay. But the lament he said was the availability of the raw material from Solvay, that is the polyether sulfone and polysulfone.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen here could address that problem. I think hollow membrane can be made from tomorrow, provided you give me raw material.
David Pong, your response to what Chandra is saying.
I'm a plastic engineer with 33 years of experience in plastic manufacturing.
Right. David Pong?
He's referring to manufacturing in India, is that right?
No,
Chandra, you got to speak. Chandra, you got to unmute and respond.
Yes, sir. Mr. David, yes, it is a brilliant idea. But every country would love to do indigenization just to cut cost. Because I cannot transport. Shipping has become today very costly after pandemic and other things. And it has become 10x. So it's best to collaborate technically. In fact, hollow membrane is not a new thing to India. BARC, the leading scientific institution of the country, has even given us a technical know-how to make hollow membranes. But the problem is availability of raw material. Few MNCs are holding the key and they are not giving it free to people like us. That's the
David, where are you getting it manufactured, if I may ask you?
We're doing it here in Singapore right now, so we know all the different steps and procedures. And so I think what Chandra you're mentioning is absolutely spot on and right. Is that we eventually need to be able to manufacture it locally so that it's able to overcome any logistics challenges and costs, right? So I think the demand out there in India is strong. We have actually some collaboration and some MOU that has been signed with Confederation of India Institute, CII, previously. So we want to be able to eventually revisit some of those and be able to kickstart local production.
Got that. Well, we have a young lady called Indrani Pal from Columbia University. Good morning to you, Indrani. You've heard these people. We know you come from a serious academic context, but your commitment to water spans nearly 2 decades now. You don't look that old anyway. You're really young. What do you see, from an outsider perspective as an academician or a serious researcher to this exchange that's happening between these guys here?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Hari, for this opportunity once again. David, this is fantastic. And I have been following all these discussions from, Professor Nanda Kumar and, Chandra's points of view, and then, from geographical perspectives. And I always look at solutions from like all these different angles, like the importance of looking at geographical similarities and geographical differences, looking at mapping and where, and tailor making solutions that are adaptable. So not only looking at problems from local perspectives, but also not getting married to a solution, but really make it, adaptable to the local conditions. And that's why I love all these conversations going on and really taking notes diligently. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, interesting that you said that it's also about, these geographic kind of commonalities. I mean, Chandra spoke.
Yeah, it's all that Nanda Kumar and Raj just mentioned. Looking at the source, where they are, and then coming to solutions and really thinking about manufacturing.
More interesting, Indrani. Sorry, more interesting is Abdul Khurshid working in Hyderabad, Sindh, Chandra working in Alang, West Gujarat. It's fascinating. If the two of them got together. And Abdul Khurshid's work is also in more or less the same kinds of, challenge areas of villages, salinity, high nitrate. Chandra knows what he has got as, challenges just now in the places that he's working on. And Khurshid also sort of talked about it. And that I think is interesting, with a wonderful group, kind all of them, not just
Hari, I just have like a very simple idea here that we could probably think about. So from all these conversations, really, having a map of, different people's viewpoints on their local issues. Like I see the map behind David, pinning.
That's the first thing I mentioned.
I don't know what the purpose of that map is, but I really love maps. And even at smaller city scale, problems really vary. Like in the United States, we are talking a lot about PFAS. We haven't yet started on that, in India, right? But it's eventually coming, right? So yeah. Fantastic.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I request Srinivas Rao to speak up? Dr. Srinivas Rao, Amranidhi, are you there? Well, the last time you had something interesting to offer. Would you want to speak up? Dr. Srinivas Rao? No, is either. Yeah.
Hari, I did see Murali raise his hand.
But Murali, Anur, you want to speak?
No, sir. I think after Dr. Rajaram, Chandra also reiterated that we have to decide based on the local water conditions.
Correct.
So
sure, that's taken. Well, where do we go from here? We have another, say, maybe 12, 13 minutes.
Yeah.
You
I have
know,
a question
yes,
just
ma'am.
on, that I think all of us would benefit from, David, and maybe you could share with us the challenge of serving the least of these, those people in the rural areas, is that they have no money. And so and they also are very, very hard to reach, aren't connected to communications channels, the normal ones. Could you describe both, where you have found your sources of funds, and then how you have managed to get your solutions into those remote areas so that you can address this very real need, which we all need to solve if we're going to, what we say, solve the global water crisis in this generation?
Sure. Yeah, I think excellent
Merrick,
question.
can I share something?
Just after David has responded, please, if you don't mind. Yes.
Okay.
Go on, David. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think at least from our experience, of which maybe many of you are more experienced in this field, but from our experience, we have to see it as a pyramid, right? There are different levels of income for the bottom of the pyramid. So at the bottom is the those which are receiving less than $2 per day, and I think this is a very challenging situation. So for this, we have to work through third parties, either as an NGO or a government that comes in to help to subsidize almost fully, or if not, it's really on a 90% basis or so, right? So that is we have to work through NGOs and governments for such communities. Then we have the higher level. Maybe they're doing $2 to $4 per day. This is where we see at least some form of affordability, not for the system itself, but for micro entrepreneurs to come in to set up a enterprising mechanism where they can be able to afford for bottled water. All right, this bottled water needs to be priced well for these communities. It cannot be priced in a unaffordable manner. But we always see that the partners that we chose to work with are able to train up micro entrepreneurs that eventually can be able to price it at a reasonable level that still allows them to make a decent level of profit, but still provide their neighbors and community with access to clean water. There are also intentions to go into ATMs. Our solutions are right now discussed as part of ATMs across certain parts of India. So we're looking into that as part of also bringing down the cost for the solutions. Of course, finally, the higher tier of affordability, maybe those above $5 per day, we're seeing microfinance comes in to support. So our solution, we have smaller solutions which are priced about $100 to $150, but if we average it out across the microfinance across a 12-month period, it makes it a lot more affordable into their own households where they can still be able to gain access. So I think it depends on the different markets, different regions, different kind of tiers when it comes to their ability to afford.
Tell us a little more about ATMs and what you're attempting there, David.
Yeah, so I think ATMs is one of the ways to really allow a lot more equitable access. So that's something that we're putting our system into the back end of the ATMs. Our system is able to endure a longer operating lifespan. So when it comes to ATMs, some of these providers find that it is reasonable. It's cost effective to be able to put a durable membrane for such a system. So we're going to be testing it out soon.
All right, you are aware that every single ATM in India uses the RO process.
Yes, so which is also the concern if the TDS actually isn't above 500, it may not be necessary to do so.
Right. Okay. Yes, Abdul Khurshid, you wanted to speak up? Yes.
Yes, I want to share that what we are doing, we just like Balochistan is here 500 kilometers away. Our KPK is 1600 kilometers away. Punjab is 600 or 700 kilometers away. What we do? Our experts go to these villages. They go to these villages. They are rural. They are scattered. They are poor. They don't have anything. Just our experts to go their villages. They find mud potters. They make filters. Within 10 to 15 days, they become with the technology. And what we do, we make equipped peoples, we make skillful peoples. And the
Right.
people then, like in Kenya, I started with 13 filters. Now there is a 56 or something, because I can't visit due to COVID
Right.
in last year. But I know in Kenya that will be multiply self and people what equipped,
Yeah.
then they will
Yeah.
promote it.
Right. I wish Chandra had not walked out of his. Chandra, there you are. Your system is also pottery based. You also work with the community of potters. You also make systems more or less of the kind that Khurshid does. Tell us what is different, or how you both are celebrating the togetherness of it. Either way.
If I understand correctly, the whole container is made up of pottery material.
Yes.
The opportunity to the local potters to do it themselves.
Yes.
And it is more of biosand filtration, I think, where it is good enough for a family to sustain and live.
Which is what you have done, right? You have done what, 150,000, 200,000?
I'll tell you the basic difference, sir. I think there are at least some 10 or 15 different companies getting into this biosand filter and with the pottery model. But how scalable is that is one thing. Good that Abdul Ji has done a great job. But I am only looking at how do we compact the whole thing into a price frame so that we can get donors for them, and the sustainability. Again, see, with all the efforts they have put the filter on pot, suppose it is fragile and breaks down, it falls down or anything because of the heaviness. The poor man loses his filter the same day. There we need to have some material on the body being stronger, and the internal core, what I do.
Give me some 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Khurshid, you need to respond to that.
No, which is a compact candle which has nanopores, which will not allow the pathogen or heavy metals or turbid things to go through. Plus, we have add-ons for fluoride or arsenic. Or
I got that. Now, Abdul Ji, let me ask you. You know, he talked about.
Actually,
Ji, batao. You know what Chandra is saying.
What happened? Our filter
We are losing you.
is not means broken. You people can easily cement it. People using what happened in 2010 super floods, and we added some filters in villages. And after what we saw, after 1 year, we go to the remote areas where people the dry and people need filters. We saw these spots from the flooded, and we cemented it and we made it.
Your network is poor. We'll come back to you. You know, see,
issue of the it is heavy news of it is bringing no issue of
Khurshid, your network is poor. We will come back to you, but this is a discussion between you and Chandra we need to have. Chandra has done about 300,000 plus households, and like he says, his system is a little different, and he has moved from pottery to food grade plastic and a few things like that, because he did not find scalability in the sort of processes that you are using in biosand filter. I think we will set up a session if Mary approves of this idea, we must get the two of them to see that we have one theme around biosand filters and food grade plastic treatment systems. If you look at even Pong, see how he, from 40 to 50 kgs, David had to work and wrestle to bring that down to as little as 2.5 kgs today that he has got for the system. So if this portability, P-O-R-T-A, not portability, if portability is part of the equation for water treatment systems, there is a challenge.
Yeah, that is where I liked what David was doing. Actually, people, the bicycle has been converted into, and luckily, as I told you, 8 more people have done similar products in different countries with their own patents and other things. But the drive is, if it is locally madable with a PVC pipe with some threading and in the lathe, and it is sturdy also, anybody could do it and just adapt. Only they need to check the hollow membrane is of right standard and maintain the right pore size. That is important. So we don't, because the whole world is having so much of need, we can keep on doing any such technologies to any number of people. It will not kill my business either. Right. That's my point. Thank you.
David, your take on what both of them said?
Yeah, I think I agree fully. Like, ultimately, the technology is meant to be really shared, and eventually, as much as possible, we want to be able to manufacture with local parts and local labor, and as much as possible localize it so that it's relevant to the local community. Absolutely. And made with local parts. I think that's the way that we can make this a much more effective global solution.
Nicely summed up.
Yes.
Very nicely summed. Yes, Bill, please.
And I agree. I just love this discussion and the way we're understanding the different solutions for the different areas and the different economies, but also the opportunity to make businesses out of this. And I think Apala Yandreddy has done a super job of organizing India Youth for Society, doing cleanups, being funded by Rotary and other groups going out into areas. And I also will share in our in the Global Waterworks community, where we summarize all of this stuff, a model to create an economic business to support like women in areas with delivering the water, like you have shared, David. But I'd like to hear Apala's thoughts on the relevance of this. And I know you've raised your hand, so maybe there's a specific question you have, but could this be something that you deliver out to the remote villages while you're doing your cleanups, or your thoughts, Apala?
Yeah, thanks, Maria. But maybe I would like to hear, you elaborated it, I'm not clear. Could there be any kind of a dealership, or maybe a maybe in a smaller way, we can start these sales in India? Especially Southeast India.
Southeast India, where would that be? You're talking about Telangana and Andhra and parts like that?
Yes, Andhra and Telangana, and even...
Sir, I will answer this question.
Please.
Actually, the model how I scaled up without the government intervention or by tenders is that I started giving any volume, whatever the NGO or the self-help group or the rural entrepreneur asked for. I don't put a tag of volume and quantity. Right. The Indian Railways and India Post are the biggest network, and
absolutely
the country to immediately reach out to the last man. So I communicated to you, apology. You want one or two, I can immediately ship it to you. Tomorrow it will reach you, no issues. And same way, I wish if David, Vivo Blue, and we can sit together, indigenous, locally, the hollow membrane thing, I think we have great things to connect, and maybe it could be a buyback. Singapore, I know the manufacturing cost is very. Suppose David could give me, instead of depending on China, if he can give me the raw material, do hollow membrane here, assemble what he wants and give it back to him, maybe it's a win-win situation for Vivo Blue, David and my company, or maybe anybody in the fray.
Maybe I think I'm a bit confused.
Yes.
Now the David's product and the way, the one Chandrasekhar you shared with me about the two items that you produce, manufacture, are the same or similar?
See, that's different. Apala, the technology is a bit different, but both are focused on affordable pricing.
Okay. And the outcome is also more or less matching. Is that right?
Again, in my candle, the added advantage is to removal of heavy materials, heavy metals, things. Whereas in hollow membrane, the focus is removing the pathogens 100% completely. And both can be reused and washed any number of times, and you can use it any number of times by washing it again and again.
Right. Let me say this. What David said the last, in that one brief sentence about how in different regions we need to simply put together people in a way, producers, solution providers, in a way that we are able to get the technology or, the treatment system working in that local region. What it means is, it's very significant what he says. Chandra, you will agree with me. And I think Apala is asking you more or less the same question. See, what it means is, to my mind at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, David and Chandra, you see, if you take your cities, we are no more than about 2% of the land mass, 140, 150,000 square kilometers. Now, the kinds of solutions that you guys are talking about are spread in the other 70, 80% of the land mass, if I leave out forests and such places. And one half of the population of the country lives in that other 70%, while this 40% or so of the urban population lives in this 150,000 square kilometers. No wonder that the regular conventional business person from the Tatas and everybody else in the world wants to be in the cities, and they want to give you these awful systems of RO and everything else, which they believe is a fix-all solution. So we are inhabiting another world here. You know, it's like being the underdog in a certain sense. And so what happens to a David, to a Chandra, to somebody else, or to a Khurshid, for instance, with the championing of solutions that he is doing in his region, you are wrestling against everything that a first semester business graduate will tell you should not be doing, right? Because you go and fight issues and concerns which beat every marketing norm in a certain sense. How we get all of you together, for example, when Mr. Nandkumar of the ICCW says, hey, I've got this many schools and they want a tender to be floated, you know what happens? Your biggest contender into such tenders will be these awful chaps from the Tatas and the whatever else. And you don't stand a chance at all, with those guys, unless there is somebody with a heart. I mean, today, Nandkumar is telling us that, well, he might be able to, that he's part of this tendering process. But he's not going to be there all the time in these processes. So people like Khurshid, Chandra, David, you guys are the Davids of the world, if I were to, to make it figurative, against those Goliaths who are your biggest, challenge. How do you take this? I think it's a more serious concern. So to go back to what David said in that one or two sentences, how do you, each of you, all of you, get to seeing that you're producing in each of these places? You are doing replication, those guys are doing scale. Scale is a 4-letter word. That is why those guys will do that. We don't want to be doing that. If we want a better world, is what every one of us here, at least in this group, will certainly resonate with, if not completely understand. I don't completely understand why we need to do it from a business perspective. But the point is that we need to do it for those human values that we all cherish, is what it's about, I believe. David, your take on that, and then I'll ask Chandra and Khurshid.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that eventually, if we are all here with the heart to want to see society improve, then there has to be some form of open innovation where we can be able to leverage on the localization of the innovations that we've created. Because even what we've created here in Singapore, it needs to be translated into local materials, localized way of being able to approach the issue out there in India. So I think that's where having the partnerships
David, let me rephrase my question, keeping in mind what I said earlier about you guys being the Davids of the world against the Goliaths. In Singapore, what is your market penetration with your product? In Singapore City?
In Singapore, actually, we don't have much of a case because we have pipeline
centralized systems for absolutely
clean water in the pipeline. So there's no fight here in
point taken. Chandra.
As you said, the Goliath is not the problem of water. Goliath is the government looking into it. So it is for the policy makers to simply say, meet standards. Maybe the technology can be anything and meet the price. I think it is very simple to make this type of agenda.
I mean, look at Khurshid's problem. Chandra, you understand, you really well understand Khurshid's problem. I am sure he doesn't have the money. He's struggling. He tells us the nice part of the story, about how he's sending people out to other places. He trains them and then they go out and see what they can do in villages and such. What he is not telling us is no one gives him any money to do that. And at the product level, his margin will be nothing to write home about. Is that right, Chandra?
No, sir, but if it is the other way around, actually you have a collaborative system, making the people participate, making them understand the seriousness of the water calamity, the problem, and then bring in a CSR or an NGO funding, which is big. Like my customers are all World Vision India, WaterAid, Water.aid. We have to write and contemplate, talk to them many number of times. They will not get convinced against RO because they are very, then we need to tell them, need to give them some pilots free of cost, take the trip, go deep, make them feel confident yours is a better alternative. That is why I got my customers and they are ready to. But with the rider, that the user also for money and he should know that nothing is free in this world. So we put a penny, then we'll 80% of the money, then I will cut down my margin. It can 5% just to sustain my company. The polish we do will take care of my company. We have bootstrap, but we are profitable.
Khurshid bhai, in the next 1 or 2 minutes, can you tell us in Pakistan, do you have the WHO or some World Bank or somebody else, I don't know, some funding organization which listens to you and to your organization and says, hey, we want to try and see if we can support your initiatives? What do you say, Khurshid bhai?
Yes, we are doing very hard since last many years. We past some years we reached 10,000, 15,000, but you know, last 3 years we are just back in 4,000, 3,000. What happened? Where we go, where we make links, where we contact, where we go to the villages, then funding available, then all available. But when we are remain at home, that nothing. So these technology needs more collaboration, more linkages, more means if we meet Chandra and we meet David and we go to the villages, then we ask them, we make them one filter, then it will be multiply. To just replication, just go to people, just find sources, just find help people. So at myself, maybe funding not issue, but the participation, collaboration, linkages, development, and reaching to the large other communities is the issue.
Wonderful, very well said. Deepak Vaika, I think you want to say something. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, because I have been listening to a fantastic conversation. I just would like to ask these entrepreneurs, have you been in touch with some of the, say, colleges where they are looking for ideas to do projects? They are looking for even they are willing to send to the villages because they have to do community service. I know because wherever I'm in touch with those colleges, engineering colleges, management colleges, they have to do community service and they raise the funds because they have to go and help the villages to do something. I'm talking from the energy point of view, but I'm sure that same could be applicable for the water, sanitation, whatever. So are such efforts being made, or is there a need for such thing? Let me know. I think we can introduce to you some colleges and start. Basically what you have to do is give them some project to work on whatever you are doing it, and give them same problem. Okay, that now how you are going to reduce the cost, how are you going to make it more affordable, how going to say whatever your goals are there, and this will be good education for them. They will be feeling that yes, I'm learning something which is about the basic needs of the people and solving a problem, and they'll feel better about it. That is my suggestion.
Lovely suggestion. Thank you for that thought. Between Mary and I, we will reach out to you, Deepak Vaikar. I know that, you know, in some sense, you're being very modest. You are capable of giving us a lot more. I know of your work. And so we will reach out to you. Grateful to you for saying what you did. We have 5 minutes. Mary, my take is this, and maybe you want to add to this. Number one, we need to see, well, I'm finding that it's just a good, happy accident that we have someone who's called David here. But figuratively today, we are finding that these are truly the Davids in a world of all these blessed Goliaths who only want to work in the city. And, you know, some nickel fell into some slot or whatever in my mind, where I realized today, as David spoke, that, you know, these big bad boys don't want to work in any of those areas because it's the same population. I've got 40% in 2% of the landmass. I've got 40% in 50% of the landmass or 70% of the landmass. Any you know, drooling idiot who has any sense of business will tell you where you should be working. And this is where these guys are making a big difference. Like David said, they come from a compassionate ground, and those guys don't. And this is one big takeaway for us, Mary, and it's a learning that we must see how we utilize as we go along in, you know, in support of the underdog. The second one is as a physical interaction level between David, I would say inevitably Chandra, Khurshid, and of course our Mr. Nandakumar from ICCW. We must see how we can enable one meeting Somewhere Ms. Nandakumar seems to be saying that, hey, there is an opportunity here if you guys want to work on it, while you set aside some of your boundaries of business itself and enable, those communities of school children and such. He's talking of 40,000, 50,000 schools, big. And he's talking of what Appala talked about, the Southeast India. First time I'm hearing a phrase like that of Southeast India. But then this Telangana and Andhra, isn't that right, Chandra? Interesting way of, defining that area. So these are the two.
No, it's making it look global. So I love that.
Wonderful. Mary Eggert, your 3-4 minutes before you wrap this up for the day. That'll be 90 minutes.
Another 30 seconds, sir.
Yes.
You quoted Alang. I want to say something interesting. 2,500 bore wells have been drilled within an area of 10 kilometers square meter. Okay. And the water is having TDS of around 1,700 to 1,400. So
Khurshid, you're listening. Aap sun rahe ho?
Yeah.
What would I have told them? Can you just imagine? I didn't want to sell myself or my product. I want to solve the problem permanently. I told them to dig because a lot of land was open and a lot of trees were there. So we made artificial ponds everywhere in and around the area where the bore is. And we said rainwater by May, June, July, August will be abundant rain in that region. I said all the water has to percolate down the ground so that it will go and dilute the TDS to a lesser level and bring it down to 500, 600. And we are also talking to some companies who do that bore drilling and puncturing it in such a way and then putting a filter mesh around that so that the slug and this tardiness will not get into the bore, but it will recharge only purely by rainwater. There is some immediate solution. I said it can be done with chemical reactions and stuff like that, but that is temporary. And I gave them both an alternative because the schools were in May. I said the temporary solution can work for 6 or 7 months, after which we will come back and do rainwater harvesting in all these bore wells.
Hari, I can share one point.
Problem solvers, rather than marketing people are selling technology. We are not here to do that. We are here to solve the water problem across the globe.
Got that. Yes, Krishna.
Hari, yes. I was working in Nagar Parkar. Nagar Parkar is the border side of India.
Right.
And Nagar Parkar in 98, when I was there, so people just migrating due to the water not having water. So what I saw, the Karanjar mountain is spreaded in 27 square kilometers. So I made some 5 dams there, and now people are socio-economic rich people. So I do have many experiences, and when we will unite, when we will work together, then we will initiate these water conservation technologies that are very cheap, local ideology, local people can save, dug these ponds, these check dams, and they can solve their issues. So a lot of things are available. So hopefully we will next connect, then we can discuss these.
We will. We have exactly 2 Fridays from now is the next TechTalk series. The coming Saturday is another WOW Action Forum series, Abdul Khurshid. We will see that, we take you there. Great. Mary, we have today from Singapore, Pakistan, the United States. I had somebody from Kampala, Uganda for some time and he dropped out. I don't know what happened to him. It's wonderful that we have people, and the cause is the same, the concern is the same. Over to you, Mary, to wrap this up.
Yes, well, thank you. I think our whole goal is, as many of you have said, we have a heart for solving the global water crisis in this generation. The technology exists, and with David's solution available, and also Vivo Blue and Aqua Research and Watson and the intelligence coming from the International Center for Clean Water, and all of you gentlemen and women, Indrani summarizing it up and mapping it, I think we can do it together. It's a matter of people now, spreading the word and connecting. I put the link to Global Waterworks in the chat where we invite you to continue the discussions. And I'm thrilled to share this week we were asked by a few different distributors in the US to help create a similar like WOW action forum here. And I think it's going to be a global movement, but you are all starting it. And David, I would just like to ask, since you were this celebrated guest today, if you have a final word and to say to everyone, and we will exit. But Dr. Hari, thank you for facilitating this so expertly.
Right.
As you
And before David has his last word, let me tell this very discerning audience that, WOW is now moving to 4 more cities. It moves to Trichy on January 7th, which is a small town of 1 million population in south of India. Then it moves to Chennai. Our ICCW has done quite here. His colleague, Sripati, a senior colleague there, has given me his, that by January 13th, we'll be launching there. Kathmandu, we are launching in January. I don't have a date yet. So 3 cities more, along with Bangalore. And each city will have some measurable target. David, to you, I'll say that the WOW Action Forum set for Bangalore last year, 1,000 crore or 10 billion liters as a target. Now, we are set for Trichy, a 1 million population town. We are set only a 1 million, what is this now? How much is 100 crore liters? 1 billion liters, while in Bangalore it is 10 billion. In Kathmandu also, we have set only 1 billion liters. It's a city of about 1.5 million people. So the effort is on one side to bring people like you, the Davids of technology, who can come in with ideas of this kind, which disrupts both technology and cost. While on the other, we're trying to see how we can heave, this massive effort to get people to see in cities why they should be doing what they should be doing to bring a massive saving of it. Well, Mary is promising at least that she will take WOW Action Forum to 1 city, at least in the United States in 2022. Let's hope she does that. David, now to you to sort of, where we started and where we have ended.
Can I interrupt just 1 minute? I just want to, I want all of you to, work on RO waste. Because I see
we saw that message there. We will work on. There is a person we have invited. It's very much on our mind, Mamta.
And on the humorous side, see what Mr. Chandra has written about RO.
Sure. We saw that. Over to you, David.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this entire community coming together to tackle this all together. I think this really amazes me how wonderful this community is, like a family coming to solve the global water crisis together. And like what Hari mentioned about how there are a lot of big boys out there, but sometimes the big challenges are not really tackled by some of them. And we are indeed the underdogs that we are doing our best. And I think that's where we need to come together as a community to fight this head on and tackle. And one day, if we continue to meet like this and continue to just bounce ideas and encourage each other along the way, definitely we're going to solve this once and for all.
One quick response to that. You are right. We will have 26 of these TechTalk sessions in 2022. Promise. This is a promise we will keep. Okay. I urge you to join us every week. On this week, it'll always be a Friday, the TechTalk session. The WOW Action Forum sessions happen on Saturdays in Bangalore and in other cities and various other days. We'll keep you posted of these things,
Sure.
This is becoming a movement, and there is no credit for any of us individually here, David. And what you said, about the Davids of the world taking on the water challenge and doing something about it. It's very true. And may there be more Davids between Chandra and Kursi than you. And I'm not even talking about your name being David. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mary. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Usha. Thanks, Suresh Bhai. Every one of you for having stayed. I'm sure you enjoyed it. Let's see how we document this. Mary has a very lovely way of putting together some stories like this. She's done it in the past for other sessions, not of WOW. I will urge her to see how she can do this for TechTalk. Yes, Mary, you let us see how you put a story together of this unique story and discussion that we've had today. Yeah.
Yes, most definitely. And it's a movement. It's a totally WOW movement, and you're all part of it. So thank you. We'll summarize in the chat and see you January 7th, because we do have the holiday. So we're going to start again January 7th, but the global calendar, we also invite you to put in your events. Right. So Thank you. I'm signing off. I think back to you, Hari. Appreciate it.
And thanks to everybody. Thanks especially to our guests from Pakistan as well as from Singapore. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.